I opened this podcast with a quotation from Mary Brolly, solicitor for the third party. She cites Nicola Mallon, the former Minister for Infrastructure, who on 29th of June 2020 announced that the Dalradian Gold planning application will be subject to an independent public inquiry. To quote, "The planning application includes an assessment of the potential socio-economic and environmental impacts by a wide range of expert consultees. Once I'm satisfied that all necessary detail and consultation responses have been provided, I will call a public inquiry to allow for robust scrutiny of the application in a public forum." Mary then went on to ask two questions. Number one, is the Dalradian Gold application now resting on the documents before this commission? And number two, is the Department for Infrastructure satisfied that the application placed before this commission is fit for robust scrutiny, in light of the deficiencies already highlighted earlier in the inquiry? Namely, the earlier issues with transboundary consultations and the absence of habitat regulations assessment. She went on then to query the wisdom of endeavouring to complete 150 questions over the next 3 days. This would mean an average time of at least 6 to 8 minutes per question. And she also reminded the Commission that there was no allowance for remote evidence of experts, a situation in which only one party suffers. And yes, you've guessed it right, it's us again, the poor suckers in the so-called third party. No live streaming, no transcripts and no explanation for same. This set the scene on day one of the second week, and the Commissioner's response to this was interesting. She remarked that the Commission did not have any power to refuse a PAC, did not have the authority not to accept documents, i.e. what may be deemed further environmental info during the public inquiry, and this is in reference to late documents being added to the planning portal by the applicant, that they needed only to figure out whether participants were given enough time to read them all, and with that they were satisfied that the evidence before them had fulfilled the conditions. Hard to know where to go after this. I have to say the public inquiry feels stacked against us. There were literally thousands of documents uploaded in March, just over a month before the PI started. On the conflict of interest question that we had at the end of last week, all of them were fired out except for the Golders report, which was noted. To hear more about this, go back to podcast number 45. We then got started on the socio-economic topics, of which the first title up was economic viability. And we grappled with a number of questions that the Commissioner put to the applicant or to the departments. It was difficult to discern where one topic started and the other left off, as they were all woven together and interconnected to one another by one outstanding issue. And that was the feasibility study, or should I say the phantom feasibility study. A line from a certain song from the 70s ran through my head all day, and if you are of an age, you may remember it. They seek him here, they seek him there. It was literally a game of hide and seek through a paper trail of documents to discern what date the feasibility study had first appeared in the world, when was it subsequently made obsolete, and how the evidence of its ghostly trail continues to show up and be mentioned in dispatches and documents to this very day. There is a whole economic case built around it. In fact, even though it technically does not exist, there was a mention of a spreadsheet shared with a government department, and in the words of the applicant party, to walk them through it so that they would be comfortable with it. I don't know about you, but having spent years in business, I wouldn't fancy showing up to my former bank manager and showing them something like this for a fairly minor business proposition in comparison to what has been proposed in this financial application. As for the third party, we found it impossible to determine anything with the obsolete data. Obsolete data that has been used to justify jobs based on obsolete mineral estimates from a phantom feasibility study. Just as an aside, mineral resources are not mineral reserves and do not have demonstrated economic viability, and there's no certainty that all or any part of the mineral resource will be converted into mineral reserve. The viability of the whole entire project sits on this report, and if I may draw your attention back to the opening lines of this podcast when Mary Brolly inquired of the Commissioner, is the Dalradian Gold application now resting on the documents before this Commission? And in particular, is the Department for Infrastructure satisfied that the application placed before the Commission is fit for robust scrutiny? Well, what do you think? One wonders who is misleading who in the phantom feasibility debacle. What could possibly go wrong, I asked myself with a certain irony. We had a refreshing, honest account from Mairead Heaney from Navan about Tara Mines, how there was no noticeable economic bonanza, and that even when the mine closed for a year, neither was there adverse effects from the closure except for the mental health of the mine workers caught up in this boom-bust economy. She went on to talk about the 50 million tonnes of toxic waste that has been stored next door to the family farm, the 40-plus families that were forced to evacuate from the townland forever, the complete disruption of the social fabric, the 30 trucks per hour on former quiet country roads, the noise, the pollution, the dust. Stakeholders and local residents being patronised and not listened to. And she concluded that there are no benefits to the local Indigenous population. When we got to the topic of trade and export, Fidelma O'Kane asked how could she possibly say anything about trade and export when she doesn't know the contents of the concentrate or where the location of the processing is to happen. Because the economic modelling is based on the phantom feasibility study, which is obsolete. That brought us to the end of the day with Mary Brolly once more raising concerns about where we are in relation to questions. We had made it to number 13 out of 150. So now they tell us the timetable is to be revised. We'll see what happens tomorrow.